This week on Ignition, we're taking a second look at the Jaguar F Type. Kim Reynolds drove all three variants of it earlier this year and performed all the necessary mental gymnastics in describing how the F Type works or doesn't need to work as the successor to the E Type. Thanks, Kim. What we're going to do this week is find out how fast it can go and how big it can slide. Because when you have 488 horsepower, an electronic locking diff in the most sporting Jaguar produced in recent memory, that's what you do. The figure 8 performance was what you'd expect from a modern Jag. Gentle understeer on entry, and then huge, lurid power slides on throttle. Get it right though, and the resulting 24-second figure 8 lap matches that of the V8 Audi R8 and Mercedes SLS. Stopping distance is impressive too, given the F-Type's portly curb weight. But then there's the acceleration. Here the F-Type is simply stunning. With a careful launch, it actually matches the lighter and far more powerful Viper to 60. It's slower to the quarter mile, of course, but not by much. And the ease of the launch and the ease of shifting means the Jag might be faster in the real world, too. The F-Type's straight-line performance was so surprising that we visited Canon Engineering's dyno to see how much power it was actually making. This engine, being a supercharged V8, makes torque quick and early, and it doesn't relent. Horsepower doesn't dip significantly before redline either. More impressive, but not as surprising, is the shape of the curves. There, it put down 447 horsepower and 405 pound-feet of torque, indicating that the Jaguar might just be slightly underestimated. If its name provides any indication, the F-Type is the spiritual successor to the E-Type. And talking about the F-Type, it's hard to not mention the E-Type because that, of course, is one of the most beautiful cars Jaguar has ever made, and it's one of the most iconic cars, too. Let's talk about the visuals. The exterior, this is a lovely looking car. It's clean, yet aggressive. I love the taillights in particular. In fact, the whole rear section, especially the exhaust pipes, the way they sort of shoot up vertically. Inside, too, this interior is very nicely done. Everything has a luxurious feel. I love the toggle switches, the gold accents on the shift paddles, the start-stop button. So we have, quite possibly, the most ludicrous sounding exhaust in the world, and that's great. That's great in a sports car, especially a Jaguar sports car, which has a very particular way of driving. And if you've seen our episode on the XFR, the XKR, all the different Jaguars we've reviewed so far, you know kind of how that goes. The chassis likes to understeer, and then as soon as you get on the throttle, it's just incredible power oversteer. As you saw probably from the testing clips where we were sliding this thing all day. Now, how does that feel on the road? Well, we have stability control on, traction control on, because let's face it, this thing makes so much power that you'd have to be an absolute madman to drive this on the road with the traction control and the stability control off. You'd either be mad or you'd end up backwards, upside down in a tree and on fire, or both, you know. But when you back off the limits, you find that the steering is nicely weighted and precise. You find that this chassis has a lot of really cool things going for it. Braking feel is precise. But the problem is the throttle. When you get on the throttle, you have so much power, and the suspension and the diff just like to let that power just consume the rear wheels that you end up completely crossed up. I think the V6, supercharged V6, is probably the better sports car, but I haven't driven it, so I can't confirm. You notice that the F Type is bigger than it seems, which is interesting. You sit taller in this car than you do in a Cayman or a Boxster. This car is wider than those cars as well. This is about the width of a Camaro, and you sense that on the road or when you're trying to park it. But then you get on the gas and you think, oh, none of that stuff matters. This is a brawny, muscle-bound hell of a roadster. I think sports car isn't an appropriate name for this thing because this is a muscle, just ripped roadster. It's insane. I have so much fun listening to the exhaust, listening to this crackle and pop and boom, that the rest, everything else is just sort of secondary. And that's unfortunate because the secondary parts, driving it quickly, feeling how the suspension loads up, they're actually quite nice, but the engine just dominates everything. And also the sense of acceleration is just absurd. This is a heavy car, it's 4,000 pounds, and it has 488 horsepower. Yeah, that's a healthy amount, but still the acceleration feels like it's far more powerful than that. It also sounds far more powerful than that too. You set this car up for a corner slow. You enter the corner slow, but then you get on the power and it's just mad. This is just insane. Is this car overpowered? Yes, unquestionably yes. But is it worse because of it? I don't think so.
The F Type is certainly more muscle-bound and rougher than a comparable Porsche and less clever, but in a weird way, perhaps it's more special because of it. The V8 and that wonderful, ridiculous noise it makes gives a sense of occasion to the experience of driving the F Type that matches the edge in the exterior and interior design. From the driver's seat, it erases any perception you might have of lightness and balance, instead rewarding you heartily on the straights with thrust and sound. Is the engine too much for this car? In every way you could hope.
The exhaust just overwhelms you. The exhaust and the acceleration overwhelm the rest of the car. You don't hear the supercharger at all. You just hear brah, brah, and it's great. And all is good in the world. Just a little claw.
Pretty sure small animals are dying somewhere because this is happening.
Oh, I'm sure what's happening is we're depleting the ozone every single time, even at low speeds. It's like, it sounds like you're next to a gun range. That's what it sounds like.